So, as she said, I did my presentation on Mount Kilimanjaro and my project this year towards the Shoes of Kilimanjaro and kind of my goal towards that. So, starting off about me, I go to Laramie High School. I'm going into senior year. I ski for the team, alpine skiing, so that's how I know Alex J. And then I do cross country in the fall, and then I fish, and I love to camp. Pretty much anything outdoors I'm a fan of. And then I also love to travel, obviously. And then I just started a job at the Human Being recently. So starting for our trip, kind of contents, skip that slide. So I'm going to start with my introduction about me, and then kind of like how we plan to do it, and like the prep and the training that we did it, and then traveling, and our route we took along with the project, and then our conclusion. So starting out with the training, we hiked every weekend together just to train as a family, and then on our own we did like our personal workouts for the weekend. I do cross country in the fall, so I run every like 3 days in the summer. And then some hikes we did Medicine Bow Peak once or twice, and then we did Gray Rock in Colorado, and some other hikes here and there in the Snowies and in Redavoo. And Horsetooth, which is a great hike as well. And then for like the beginning and planning and packing, obviously you have to get a lot of stuff that's made for Kilimanjaro, and like the dust and the gear, because it gets really hot at the bottom but really cold at the top, so you need all of the layers but the least amount of like space to take with you. And so like several pages of it, and you gotta decide what's most important and how to pack what and how many bags to use. And so we had the most small bags with the most organization, and everything fit together in one big bag. And then you have to weigh it like as in the picture, and we weighed all of our bags and then took stuff out, put it back in, and over again. And then those are the bags like in this picture that the porters carried up for us. And then we had our day packs, like my blue backpack in that we carried up ourselves. So once we get to the travel part, we flew from Denver, and then it's over 30 hours of flying with all the layovers and the flights and everything. And because we did it in 2022, it was still like past COVID, and so we still had to wear masks on our 13-hour flight and everything. And then we stayed in DC overnight, and we slept on like the cots they had set up, and then got on our 13-hour flight to Ethiopia in Addis Ababa, and then stayed there for like 5 hours, and then finally made it to Kilimanjaro Airport. And we flew Ethiopian Air, which gives you these little like travel bags because you're there for like 14 hours, so they give you a little toothpaste and burpee socks so you don't fall down. And then once we finally made it to like the town of Arusha, we had to drive there from the airport, which is like an hour. They picked us up there in like a van, and then drove there. And once we got there, we, as you could tell, stretched out from the long flight, and then slept. And the next day we had a rest day, so we didn't have to go from jet lag into hiking right away. And we had the breakfast, which was interesting, maybe not the best food I've ever had, but still good. And then toured the town. We went to a museum that was like local artists, and it was a huge museum, like 4 floors, really, really cool. We actually bought like something he was carving in the picture. They had a lot of those statues with like people holding on to people. They were like this high. So we had that in our house to like remind us of Kilimanjaro. And then just a depiction of like the town and how it's very different than here, and it's kind of awesome to see that not everywhere is the same and to get a different glimpse of the world. So day 1, we did the Lemosho route, and it's 8 days, so each day I'll tell you what we did and kind of exactly how long it was, what place to what camp, and kind of how we got there and what areas we went through. So this was a quicker hike, but it was through like the rainforest and like really gorgeous scenery, but we had to drive like 3 to 4 hours from our hotel there, and on like this big van with our whole crew, and we met the people we were climbing with. We were climbing with 4 other people, so it was my dad, my mom, and then the other people we met, 2 of them were actually from South Africa, and they had like a tea tree farm and banana plants there, and they were really nice and actually very, very friendly to be on the trip with us. And then we met some other people in the picture that are from Boston that were also very friendly. And so this one was through the rainforest, as I said before. Right as we started that, we like had lunch in a big pavilion as they checked us in, and there were tons and tons of people there. Like everybody was getting ready for all the different routes in the same area, so it was a lot of people. And then we had like our first lunch that we had, which was actually like really undercooked chicken. So we were really nervous about our entire trip based on that part. And then once we got past that, we hiked all the way to this camp, which I'm gonna butcher, so I won't pronounce it. And then it was a really gorgeous campground. And in these pictures, you can see the tents that the porters set up before you get there, so when you get there, you're like ready to go. And then you come back for dinner in this tent that the cooks made you, because everybody, all the porters, there's like a cook, there's people who carry the bathroom for you, and then that carry your stuff, and then like the waiter person that takes it from there, from like the cook's tent to your tent. And then we also saw these cool monkeys on the way, and lots of beautiful flowers and other monkeys just first through the rainforest. And then we slept here, and it's actually really frightening to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night in a rainforest with all the monkeys barking around, because they make really high-pitched barks for some reason. But after that fear got past, everything was good. And then day 2, we started off with that camp, obviously, and then went to Shira Camp. And this hike was around 4.9 miles. And this was a pretty extensive hike because you're going up and down, starting to make it into the savannah, but lots of really hilly terrain we took. And then this was like the first kind of glimpse of Kilimanjaro we got, because at first when you start from like the beginning trailhead, you couldn't see it. So it was like, oh, where am I going? And then we started to get into some volcanic rock as well. And then this was our whole crew, and then the main guide, and then the other guides that helped us get there. And then dinner they had served here as well. And then to day 3, we went to more camp and started off at Shira Camp. And then this was the cook that we had that prepared all the meals for us. And then we went, it was like this really big gorge, as it says, with like these rocky areas. And then we did like a double hike that day. So we got to the campsite, took a little break, ate some snacks, and then went on this totally different hike off of that like wasn't on the way, just to get acclimated. And it was like up some really rocky areas, and then like you like had to like climb to the top of these rocks with everybody. And then it was like a really pretty view, but we had already dropped off our day pack, so then it was just an easy hike down back to camp to fall asleep. And then every morning they would bring you coffee and hot chocolate in your tent. And so then you could have a little cup before you went to breakfast to like get you started for the day. And then this day was through like the savannah again, getting up to the higher areas. Going on to day, and this was like 8.7 miles because of the double hike. And then day 4, we went to Bronco Camp, and this was like 4.3 miles. And then this was the lava tower day, so you go up a ways, and then you go down again to get acclimatized, so then it's not like you've been up too long. And so this was a pretty hard day. This and the next I really struggled with myself. Even though this was a descent and it was one of the easier days because you go down for a ways instead of just hiking up and flat, this was like the worst day for me, and I started to feel kind of sick and really, really tired and fatigued all day. And then once we got there, like the next day I started feeling better, and the next day. And then I feel like one of the best days for me was the summit day for some reason. And then the porters that we walked by, they carry like a lot of stuff on their heads when they're hiking all the way up, and then on their backs, and they're like these extremely heavy packs. And we're just carrying our little day pack, so it's very humbling to see that. And there were a lot of like rock towers built that everybody makes on the way, so it's pretty cool to see like at the top of these really cool places that it's like everybody's been here. And then day 5, this was a shorter hike, but up the Barranco wall, so it's really steep, really scary. There's actually not many pictures of the Barranco wall because it was very scary and you didn't want to get your phone out. And it took us into part of the Arctic zone and like a lot colder, misty as you can see in this picture, so we started bundling up, getting a lot chillier. And then this is how they got water, because once you get higher, the water dwindles down. And so they would go down to the river and carry it back up for us. And then, even though it was such a short mileage, it still took like 5 hours to get there. And you go really slow. They call it pulley, which means slow. So you go really slow, because if you go too fast, then it's like not helpful at all to get there, because you'll be really tired, and then the altitude will get to your body. Going on to day 6, this was like the night before the summit, and so as you can see, we made it into like above the clouds, so everything was above the clouds, obviously no trees, no grass, just rock, lots of dust and rocks. And we brought these gaiters that you put up here, everybody knows what gaiters are, and then just to keep the dust off, because every path is so dusty and you start coughing up dust, you're covered in dust, and you obviously can't shower, so you're just living in dust this whole trip. And those really helped. If you don't have those, then it's like really life-changing to have them. And so this was the last night before the summit, as I said. And so we got very little sleep this night, and then woke up at 1 a.m. the next morning. So we ate dinner and went to bed earlier than the other nights because it was a quicker hike as well. So we got there, ate a quick dinner, and then went to sleep because everybody's ready and nervous for the next day as well. And so this picture with our whole group in it up there is like kind of before we got to our camp. This was the camp the night before in the morning, and then this was the summit camp. And so it's like obviously pretty barren. And then day 7 was like obviously the summit. And so you go up 6 to 7 hours and then 4 to 6 hours down. So it's like a 13-hour day. This is obviously the most extensive day, and you start really early, so you're exhausted by the end of the day. And so at this point, we made it to Stella Point for the sunrise. And the way up that is like switchback after switchback, and you can see all the groups ahead of you and all the groups behind you. And if you misstep, then you're going to roll down this really gravelly, rocky hill. So it's really scary, and everybody's going really slow, just back and forth up it. And you would take really, really short breaks. And there's like all these jagged rocks around, so you could sit down for like a minute. They didn't want you out there long, because if you stop for too long, then you get fatigued so easily that it's really hard to start going again. And every time we would break, my dad would like disappear, and we actually later learned that he was having some bowel struggles in the jagged rocks himself. And so I'm just glad that I didn't have to go through that, others did. And yeah, and then we made it to the summit. So this is our summit picture, and for some reason my dad had like lobster gloves. And this was a view from up there, and this was a glacier picture. So the summit, we made it up here, you like walk up this line, see the summit, and then to the side there was like that glacier, and you can't stay up there long. So this is our only picture of the summit, because everybody's up there at the same time, and if you stay up there too long, you could get sick easily. And these other two, we took altitude medicine just to, I guess, acclimate easier so we didn't struggle up it, because the other people in our group that had been training a really, really long time, the two guys from South Africa, didn't take it, and they had been training like almost every day, climbing through the summer with like rocks in their bags, so they were ready for this. And then by the time we got up there like 20 minutes before them, because they were so sick. We didn't think they were gonna make it. They were like slowly, step by step, barely making it. And then the guides bring oxygen for people just in case something really bad happens. And so we actually saw this other person on our way up with oxygen that didn't make it up, and they had to be like taken down, which is really heartbreaking if you're that close and you can see it but you don't make it. But everybody in our group made it, so that was really exciting, and we could all celebrate equally. So for the after summit, it's kind of daunting because you're like, oh, I did it, but then you have 6 hours down. And so you stop for like lunch, and you kind of get to sit down for a while, but then everybody starts getting really tired and wants to take a nap because you woke up at 1 a.m. But then they're like, no, you have to go, so then you have to hike for 6 more hours down, or I guess 4 at that point. And then once you do that, you start going from the rocky area, being able to see like the clouds really close again, going through the clouds, and being able to see this savanna again and kind of go through that flat, dusty landscape. And the pace they take down is so fast. And you see all these porters with your heavy packs just running down, basically. And it's so frightening because I almost fell so many times, and they're carrying like 10 times my weight and then just running down. And then we got to Basecamp. And then the next, so this was our last day. Like, we woke up this morning and then we were on our way out, which was really exciting because at that point no one had had a shower in a long time. And then, so we hiked for 6.4 miles through like the rainforest and the savanna, and we kind of slept in like the middle land, like kind of greenish but not super tree. And then you start walking through these like beautiful trees, and then making it to the very end of it. And then we took the same bus ride we took there back to the Summit Lodge is what we stayed at, and then we ate dinner there and then slept. And then they dry out the tents we saw the next day just on the top of the building, not chained, but like tied up from the ground, so I thought that was really cool. And then I guess that sums up the like basically our climb there. And then afterwards we stayed a night, had like a rest day in between, and then we took like a 3-day safari, which was actually really, really fun. And it was like very calming after, and pretty cool to see, and you ride in the safari vehicle, which was awesome in my opinion. And so why I want to do the Shoes of Kilimanjaro is because while we were hiking up, tons and tons of porters that are helping us, like the most important part for us to get to the top, had horrible shoes. Like, we saw people with Crocs, with like Nikes falling apart, and everybody that had good shoes saves them for like the top. And so when you're on the rainforest area and the savanna, they all have like the loafers and like sneakers and like things that can barely tie and that are breaking. And we saw tons of soles of shoes on the ground throughout it too. I think I have pictures. The next slide. Like, these are the type of shoes that people were wearing, and it's like, you're the most important part to me, and you're doing it in this. And I have like really nice shoes. So I thought I want to help them and be able to make how I felt with my shoes and how that got me to the top, to have them do that, because I couldn't imagine how hard it would be with shoes like that. And like, imagine having the sole of your shoe fall off in the middle, and then you're just like hobbling every step, and then it's like withering apart. And so obviously why, and then the goal is to bring 100 shoes to the Climb Kelly service, which is what we used. And they sent us this booklet, which I forgot to mention at the beginning, and it kind of details everything that you need to bring and how to do it and your plan. And then there's like a tiny spot in the book that's like a small paragraph long that says, "We would love it if you could bring like stuff to donate to our porters." And it makes it seem kind of like small and not that important. And when you get there, it's like, oh wow, like everybody needs like everything because it gets worn down so much because they're hiking so often. And so I wish I could bring like every type of gear, but I think shoes is the most important part for me. And so we're raising money to fund shoes. We've raised $23.50 so far, and we've used some of that money to buy shoes, obviously. And so we have 74 pairs of shoes, counting the ones that he gave us, that David gave us. And then, yeah, which are in that box. So if you have any, we would love it if you could bring them to that box. And yeah, we leave July 18th to the 27th is when we're going to go to Tanzania to bring our shoes to them. So thank you so much for listening to my presentation and coming tonight. I really appreciate it.
So how are you going to get your shoes there? Are you just going to throw them in a bag, or?
Yeah, we got these like really big totes from Amazon, and we're trying to pack like 11 pairs of shoes per tote because my dad is a 1K traveler, so we each can bring like 3 or 4 bags with us for free.
Any questions?
So was it cold?
Yeah, at
On
the top,
Summit?
it was cold. Well, you went there, right? Was it pretty
I
cold
climbed
for
it.
you guys? Yeah.
Yeah, it was cold though.
Yeah. Well, we were all bundled and everything, and at least it wasn't blizzarding because sometimes it's like blizzarding and then no one can go up there because it's just so unsafe.
What kind of shoes are you looking for? Just hiking shoes or running
Yeah.
shoes okay? Or?
Like trail shoes, some running shoes is fine because it's better than the ones in the pictures, obviously. And then hiking boots is like the main goal. So we got like really nice ones from New to You, and then some from Sierra and REI, like the pretty big boots.
Anything you send them will be better than what they're
Yeah,
wearing.
exactly. That's
For
our goal.
sure. There was people where they cut the tires and then they just looped cord through them, and they were walking in those, carrying those heavy things.
What size shoes are you looking for?
Pretty much any at this point because I don't know, any is better than none.
What inspired your family to go on this hike?
My mom loves hiking, and she wanted to climb one of the 7 summits, and so this one was the least technical, like you don't need like actual rock climbing gear. And so I think that's why we did this one, and we all wanted to go to Africa and see what it was like there.
Are you gonna do some more summits? Did you get summit fever?
Kinda, I think later in life, maybe.
Sure.
But yeah, it was an incredible experience, so if you can, I really recommend doing it. And you don't really need to, I don't know, we didn't do that much training. We went on a hike each weekend in the summer, and so it was really fun. And I didn't feel like I needed to train more to make it up to the summit. I mean, it would obviously help, like the people, like the Los Sportiva people, passed us going like 3 times faster than us, and they made it up and down in like 3 or 4 days. And so it helps if you train more, but you can also do it different.
Where did you go on your summit at? Did you stay in Tanzania, or did you go over across the border, or did you go to Kenya, or were you just in Tanzania for your safari as well?
Tanzania. Well, the town was Arusha that our hotel was at, and they
Yep.
just took us out of there and just somewhere in Tanzania. I can't remember where it was. But like the main spots, they kind of take everybody. We didn't go to Kenya. Did you guys go on a safari when you went?
I've been there several times, so I went to Zanzibar.
That's where we're going after bringing the shoes this
Yeah,
year.
Zanzibar is fantastic.
Yeah, I'm really
It's in the
excited.
Indian Ocean. It's really beautiful there.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, you'll like it.
Was it a transition between the rainforest and the summit and everything in between, like different ecosystems or different weather?
Yeah.
How do you prepare for that?
I mean, you just kind of, it's like kind of slowly layering up. So you wear like an extra layer every day, and by the time you get to the summit, you're wearing like a really big coat. And it's actually really cool because you go from really green to like kind of like shrubbery, and then those hikes are just really flat and long and dusty. And then you go into like the rocky ones, which are even dustier somehow, and rocky and like volcanic rock, and those are steeper, especially up the Barranca wall. That was a really challenging point because it's like every step and you have to go up. It's pretty challenging, but that was really interesting to see like the volcanic rocks and how the rocks are there versus the rainforest.
Isn't it 7 of the 8 climate zones in the world are on Kili? It's the only place in the world where you can go through 7 of the 8 climate zones.
Mm.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think it's 7 of the 8 or 6 of the 7 or whatever it is. 7 of the 8 climate zones. You go through climate Kili.
Yeah, that was probably one of my favorite parts, was just seeing how much you could, like there's so many different layers to it to explore.
I think on the Barranca Wall too is like where we really, because you know you're hiking and you're very focused on what you're doing, and like the porters are passing you and you're like cheering them as they go by, and especially if they're like your porters and guides, right? You get to know them a bit, and like, but it was on the Barranca Wall that you're like seeing their feet directly at your face, and they're like moving up around these walls like it's nothing, and the footwear is just like shockingly standing out really at that point. And it was after that that we were just like couldn't stop talking about it as a family. Wow, like look at it, what they're wearing. So, it's also hard to document it too much because then you're like awkwardly trying to take, photos of people's feet as they go by. But we had been talking about it as we were climbing, like really struck. Our entire group was just like, wow, this is like really, they're the most perfect part of our journey. And we'll look at the, and it is very humbling, like he said, like we have come with our thousands of dollars of gear, and they're very mismatched in their unsafe equipment as they do this for us to help us get there. So it's very humbling, like he said.
And like in this picture, you can tell this was like our waiter and porter carrier, Innocent. He was very, very kind, one of the nicest people I've ever met. And he had an Arc'teryx jacket, and everybody just donates. Like once you see that, everybody donates their stuff because like I don't need this anymore. I'm not hiking this again for a while, and you're hiking it next week. So I'd rather give it to you than keep it in my closet all year long. And my mom donated her coat to one of the guides that took us up there, and he was so happy, and it was like the sweetest thing I've ever seen because his coat was like ripping everywhere. And because we give our gear, and then we go out and see who got it, and it was like the sweetest older guy, Edison, had gotten my mom's coat, and he was so happy. And
I cried, okay.
It's pretty cool though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really, it's a really incredible experience, and we have to give back to help, us have a dream come true for us. So I just want to give back. And you donate your stuff to the main guide, and then he has a list of what porters that need certain items, and so he is like very organized, very methodical. Like it's not just like a free-for-all. He's like very intentional on like who needs what kind of gear, what was donated from that time, and then people go in, and so like and it wasn't like we were like standing there watching who's getting what. It was just like a very natural thing. Like we just
like we were saying goodbye to everyone, and then he was wearing the coat that my mom gave
it
me to
was
say
like waiting
thank
for
you.
me to notice with like the biggest grin you've ever seen, right? And it was just like really touching.
And they obviously have like a big group. It's not just the porters that took us through Climb Kili, and so they disperse it through like probably 50 porters, and so it's like they all get certain stuff they need. So if anybody has any boots, we would really appreciate it. And if anybody would like to donate, it's more than optional, but we would appreciate it.
How many more pairs do you need?
26. That is our goal. So thank you guys so much. We also have